Our newsmaker this week is Maryland's new Attorney General, Brian Frosh. Sir, congratulations, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to be here.
Before we talk about what you hope to accomplish as Attorney General, maybe we should start by explaining what the office does. There's a few parts to it.
There are many parts to it. The Office of the Attorney General represents all of the state agencies, the governor, the General Assembly, the judiciary, and defends the state when it gets sued and sues on behalf of the state and on behalf of the people of the state of Maryland.
It's essentially a very large law firm.
It is. Arguably the largest in the state. There are 460 plus or minus assistant attorneys general.
And then there are other divisions, consumer protection,
right,
that don't directly represent any specific agency.
That's right. The Consumer Protection Division fights for consumers. We get about 49,000 calls a year from Maryland consumers who are having problems, and we also engage in lawsuits to vindicate consumer rights even if we don't get a call.
So why did you give up an established law practice, a powerful chairmanship of a Senate committee to be the Attorney General? What do you want to accomplish?
You know, the thing about the Attorney General, or at least the way I envision the job, is it's the people's lawyer. And you can do great things for the people of the state of Maryland in the job. And frankly, I think I can do more to protect the environment, to protect consumers, to make people safe, things that Marylanders care about as Attorney General than I could even as chairman of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. In
terms of the operation of the office, the emphasis of what people are focused on, is there anything that you plan to change?
Well, I think I will emphasize the areas that I just mentioned to you. They'll receive special attention, more energy, consumer protection, environmental protection, public safety, and there are always issues that challenge our citizens, that challenge our state, protecting our natural resources. You know, we look across the border to West Virginia, and there was a storage tank of chemicals that leaked just a few thousand gallons, and it polluted the drinking water for 300,000 people in 9 counties. They couldn't drink with the water, or couldn't shower with it for quite some time. Failure of regulation, failure of enforcement. Same thing, North Carolina, you have a big coal ash spill that pollutes the Dan River for 70 miles. So enforcing the environmental laws, making sure that people are following the rules is something that's high on my list. Protecting consumers, making sure there's not another subprime crisis as there was in 2008. I'm not sure that the Attorney General of Maryland can do that single-handedly, but we can sure help.
You mentioned that part of the role is representing the administration, the governor, yes, specifically the governor and the agencies that are controlled by the governor. Obviously, you've been a progressive voice in the legislature. We have a new Republican governor. When that comes into conflict at some point, and I'm sure it will, with their agenda and your leanings, what happens?
Well, the governor's my client, so I have to represent the governor. And we've seen already one instance in which there's an area in which he and I may not agree, but the Attorney General's office has opined in a way that I think would please him. David Brinkley, former senator, soon-to-be Secretary of Budget and Management, asked for an opinion about whether Governor Hogan could pull back Governor O'Malley's phosphate regulations. And the answer from the Attorney General's office was yes. So that's the way you've got to play it. It's you have to be an umpire. I'll tell him what I think the law is and try to help him follow it.
Are there areas where the Attorney General can act independently in terms of,
yes,
of lawsuits? Where might that come into play?
Well, in lots of areas. And in the area of consumer protection, for example, there is a statute that says, the Attorney General, you go out and you protect consumers, and here's your authority to do it. You don't need the governor's permission. Just go do what you think needs to be done. And we'll make full use of that.
What's your perspective, having been in the legislature for a few decades on the Hogan victory. What were voters saying last year?
I think voters, it's always difficult when it's a midterm presidential election and you're the party that holds the presidency. In this case, it was not only the midterm presidential election, but the midterm of his second term, and it was the end of 8 years of the O'Malley-Brown administration. And I think people always are intrigued by and interested in something new. How can you make my life better? Yeah, okay, you did a few things over the past 6 or 8 years, but I'm still struggling. And I think that played a big role.
With your experience in the legislature, especially the 4 years when Bob Ehrlich was governor, what do you expect this time in terms of relations between the first floor and the second floor?
I think it'll be smoother. I think that Governor-elect Hogan has learned some lessons from the Ehrlich administration, and he says, and I believe him, that he understands that he has to work in a bipartisan way, and that he's going to have to accommodate the sentiment and the policies that are established by the General Assembly, and they'll have to accommodate him as well.
Attorney General of Maryland, Brian Frosh, thank you for being with us.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, Jeff.